Hopefully with this technology, I'm never quite sure that everyone can hear me, but I'm just assuming that that we're on live here. So this is Mila Kelly, and welcome again to our second class in the Biomimicry Workshop. I wanted to quickly, before Marie gets started, I wanted to just quickly show you something on our website that we've put up for everyone to be able to access some of the material, all of the materials that Marie has sent out. So just in case you feel like you've lost it or aren't sure you have everything that you need, we've put them on our homepage, or on our website, which is www.peakstoprairies.org. So this is the homepage. Once you get there, you can either click on this webinar tab or word on the left navigation bar, or you can go down a little bit further and click on this webinar icon. But either way, it will take you to the same place. And when you click on that, it will bring you over to this page. It says P2 webinars, and the first webinar listed there is the EPA Biomimicry Webinar 2012. And under here, we've got all of the, or most of the materials that Marie has sent out. So we've got the biomimicry overview, the workshop class, this view part 1 of the webinar series. Hopefully nobody's having problems with it. We did have some problems uploading it to YouTube, so our web specialist was able to get it on here. But if anyone has any problems, just give me a, just shout me a question or a chat during this presentation and let me know if you've tried to watch it and were unsuccessful. And some of the other materials that Maria sent out today are the taxonomy and the biomimicry overview, and these are some links to the videos that she mentioned in one of her emails. So anyway, we'll just be constantly updating that as Marie sends things, and if you need to access them, if you've lost them off your email, then you can find them there. So again, that's just off of our homepage and under the webinar link. And with that, there's going to be a couple of times today where Marie is going to ask for some feedback or to answer a couple questions. So just as a reminder, all you need to do is, I think what we're going to try today is for you to raise your hand, and then I'll call on you, and when I call on you, it just means that I've unmuted you. So, but that's unmuting you on the webinar software. You might have muted your own phone for whatever reason, and so you might need to unmute yourself on your phone, but we'll give you a few seconds to get that all sorted out, and once we call on you. So you could also, if you don't feel comfortable talking, you could also just type an answer into the question or the chat pane, and I can go ahead and speak for you if you would prefer to do that. So with that, was there anything else logistically, Marie, that we needed to talk about? No, I don't think so. Okay. Okay, well, with that, I'm going to turn it over to Marie. And again, just another reminder, if you need to ask me a question during the presentation, go ahead and type it into the question pane, and I'll do my best to answer that. And now I'm going to turn it over to Marie.
Okay, let me see here. Trying to get, okay, can everyone see my screen? Can you see my screen, Mila?
Yep, I see it.
All right.
Looking good.
And is the sidebar in the way?
No, that's just on your, the sidebar is just on your screen. We don't see that. Everybody sees their own sidebar, and that usually disappears after a few seconds. So
oh, all right.
We're good.
Well, good morning, everyone. Hope everyone's doing well. We have a lot of material to cover today, so I'm going to go through it fairly quickly. So first of all, the intent of this class is to discover the 3 C's of biomimicry: ethos, reconnect, and emulate. Learn how to integrate biology into the design process, and learn how to identify the function and context for your design challenge. And when I was going through this material to prepare the webinar, I realized that one of the things we did in the biomimicry educational series that I graduated from was we actually took a design course from the Ontario School of Arts and Design. And I realized that as an engineer, I really didn't know the formal design process. And many of you who are on the phone may not understand a formal design process, but you have done design. And so this not only introduces you to some of the concepts of formal design, but also starts the design for your own challenge. We're going to do a homework review for the class, share some eyesights. I'm going to present 2 new case studies. Several people asked that I continue to present biomimicry case studies each month. Go through the biomimicry history, ethics, and philosophy. Look at the design approach. Learn about function, content, and go through the April homework review. And then we'll have some time for questions. So let's go through the homework. We got 4 teams. We got some good schedules here. The adapters are one team. They're going to have not only some good meetings, a face-to-face meeting, and they've gotten the leaders for their homework assignment. The communication team, they're right on it. They got everything set up to meet in their meeting schedule. So we're really they're ready to go. The organized team, they're keeping it really simple, and I'm assuming they're going to use their organizational knowledge from nature for their own organizing in the future. And then team H2O, they're fluid. So they're going to, they got their team schedule all up and running. So I appreciate everyone turning those in on time, and I heard several stories where people were really getting to know their team members through a lot of different activities, so that's great. So let's talk about eyesight. So reconnecting with nature is actually being in nature. And for us at this time period in history, outdoor experiences are usually highly programmed or extremely active. So when you think of yourself outdoors, it's doing something. Sometimes reconnecting with nature requires really just slowing down without having a plan in mind. And part of the practice of routinely going to your eyesight is finding that reconnection and developing a practice of reconnection. So at its simplest, really an eyesight is just sitting for at least 25 to 30 minutes without doing anything at all in a natural setting. And it doesn't matter where, there's something really outside to discover everywhere. And the first 10 minutes is usually pretty easy. And the second 10 minutes is often challenging for some of you, for myself as well. And as you find yourself wandering to other non-natural things or just getting bored because we're usually so active when we're outdoors. So if a thought comes up while you're at your eyesight, just ignore it or let it float by and stick with it. You've not seen all there is to see in the natural world, and the final 10 minutes usually fly by as really the world begins to reveal itself. And as any new practice, the more you do it, the better you get at it. So a lot's been happening in nature as spring is coming forth, and I hope that all of you have been visiting your eyesight and relearning how to observe nature with a childlike curiosity. Would anyone like to share their eyesight experience with the class? Is anyone raising their hand?
I am waiting for that first, for the first volunteer. Oh, John Brink is raising his hand. So I'm going to go ahead and call on you, John. So now I'm going to, oh, wait, I unraised your hand. Sorry, raise your hand. Sorry. Raise your hand again, please. Okay, great. And now I'm going to unmute you. And John, you there?
Yes. Can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right. Well, my eyesight is my backyard, and it's a great place to be in the springtime, particularly early in the morning when there's an awful lot of bird communicating going on. And I shared with our communications group, since we are focusing on communication, all the or many of the things that I was able to enjoy and see and hear, including the interspecies interactions, like the crows mobbing a hawk in the neighborhood, and all the other verbal of communication that goes on among the various bird species, and also some kind of interesting aspects of the connections between human artifacts and animal communication, in that this is the time of year when the red-shafted flickers are doing an awful lot of communicating about territory and finding partners and so forth. And they seem to really like rain gutters and chimney caps, because it amplifies the sound of their pounding on these things. So that's kind of the gist of this. I did notice that the patterns of communication change through the day, and I don't want to go on too long so other people can have a chance to speak, but that's a few of the highlights anyway.
All right, that's great. Is there anyone else?
Thank you. Yes, I'm going to call on Mary Blanchard. I've unmuted you, Mary. Are you there?
I am. I'm going to communicate through my phone because do I have a big echo on your end?
Yes.
Excellent. I don't have a microphone for my computer, so I don't know how this is going to work out.
It's not too bad. Go ahead.
All right. Well, my eyesight is along the Animas River in Durango, Colorado, and it's kind of a disturbed area where there's a lot of folks who are hike and bike and fish and such, and so it's kind of interesting because there's an interaction between, you know, the natural world trying to preserve itself and folks recreating. So my eyesight's along the the eastern shore of the river. It's fairly steep.
Hey, Mary, can I interrupt you for just a minute?
What's that?
Can I interrupt you for just a second?
Sure.
Sarah was saying if you mute your speakers, it might minimize the background.
I thought that I did.
Okay.
Can you guys hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay. Is that any better?
No, but it's not terrible, so keep
How's
going.
this? Is that any better?
Not much, but go ahead.
Okay, how about now?
That's better.
Okay. Technology. It's great. Anyway, so I looked at the ways that not only the vegetation but the river system itself adapted, and so I noticed a lot of things happening with the vegetation along the river to protect the shore. There's then leaf alder along the shore, and it's aligned to, this echoes drive me absolutely insane. I don't know if I can go on. Anyway, the vegetation is really protecting the shoreline in many ways. There's also terracing of the slopes that seem to work with the flow of the river as it varies from less than 200 CFS to over 6,000 CFS, usually most seasons. There's also some springs that flow into the river that act as a way to sieve out any kind of sediment or nutrients that might be flowing into the river. And also the vegetation on the steeper slopes acts as a trap to remove some of those sediments. So just some of the things that I noticed along my eyesight.
Well, Mary, it sounds like your eyesight's really a beautiful place. Thanks so much for sharing.
Sure.
So think about sharing your eyesight next month with us. So we'll be calling on some more people each time to share those parts of nature. So what I'd like to do now is to present 2 new case studies. This one is about a stiff to a flexible polymer from Case Western University is working on this one. So the transition from hard to soft tissue gives some species the ability to adapt their environment, whether it is to optimally distribute the force on an animal or to allow complete release or avoidance of pressure for locomotion. This unique ability is achieved through the rearrangement of microfibers within the material itself, creating an ordered microstructure as a hard material and a disordered microstructure as a soft material. So the strategy that's being used by organisms to do this is a reversible interlocking or coordinating structures that change the arrangement of fibers from ordered to disordered to achieve the function that they want. However, one of the most mysteriously and intriguing capabilities of the sea cucumber can be found within its skin. So mutable collagenistic tissue called MCT is unique to ectoderms and has the ability to transform itself from pliant to flexible, like a noodle to stiff and rigid like a CD case within a matter of seconds. No energy is required to keep this material in either state, unlike our muscles that burn ATP while contracting. Once the sea cucumber has made itself rigid, it can maintain that strength for as long as it wishes. So a hungry starfish best demonstrates the functional properties of MCT. When a starfish tries to open a clam, it situates itself against both surfaces of the clamshell. The starfish then exerts an outward force attempting to pull the shell apart. But the starfish is no match for the strength against the strong muscle inside the clam, who is able to stay firmly shut. Yet MCT gives the starfish an edge, because under this tension, the starfish simply makes itself rigid, locking its shape, exerting a constant pull on the clam without exerting any energy. The clam doesn't have MCT, so it has to keep burning energy to keep itself closed and eventually tires. The slow waiting game pays off for the starfish, who then has a nice open clam to eat. So the sea cucumber has much to teach us, and as we learn more about MCT, we realize the immense possibilities of complex adaptive material. Scientists at Case Western Reserve have begun to mimic the sea cucumber for biomedical applications. So they have created a new material that is constructed on the same scale as collagen fibers and even uses the same principles of hydrogen bonding to create a material with similar properties. In this case study, the nanofiber interaction utilizes a solid polymer material that goes from a stiffness of a CD case to that of a rubber band. Initially, the team is using this material for brain surgery. The material needs to be stiff during the procedure to implant the material. However, it needs to be soft and pliable once it is in place to perform the function of the work in the brain. Similar mimics have utilized polyacrylic acid-coated carbon nanotubes or cellulosic nanofibers that can change viscosity upon a change in pH. The potential applications are huge, from novel attachment systems to building materials. Imagine a mutable attachment mechanism where a flexible material could be squeezed into a place and then set. You could develop something like emergency medical braces that wrap around a broken limb in a soft stage and then stiffen to set, or even a responsive building element that changes shape when they get wet or hot. So in this case study, we're mimicking both the form and the process of the organism. The other one I'd like to present is one from Qualcomm. They're developing a material called Mirasol. And who would have thought that a butterfly's shimmering wings or the peacock's iridescent plumage will have helped engineers develop display screens for mobile displays. Using nature's most beautiful color displays as an example, Qualcomm Mirasol displays are based on the principle of light interference, which is used to determine the color of the reflected light. Though simple in structure, the technology's elements provide the functions of modulation, color selection, and memory while eliminating active matrices, color filter, and polarizers. So the result is a high-performance display. Color generation via interference is much more efficient in the use of light compared to traditional color filters and polarizers, which work on the principle of absorption and waste much of the light entering the display. So Qualcomm is one of the largest manufacturers of cell phones, and one of the big problems with the new smartphones is that they lose their charge fairly quickly. So if they could develop a new screen technology that is a low energy technology, they would have a big corner on the market. So in this particular example, we're mimicking the process of the organism. Okay, let's talk about biomimicry history, ethics, and philosophy. So the future in our world belongs to those who give the next generation a reason for hope. And biomimicry is one of the ways to do that. And I think that's why it appeals to young people so well. So let's talk about the meme. So looking towards nature as model for innovation is a novel, useful notion, and for many people it just rings true. Once people hear this meme, they don't often forget it, and they tend to tell others about it. The brand of biomimicry centers on seeking nature's advice as a guiding framework for cultural shifts towards a sustainable living. And the Biomimicry group has cultivated an ethos, a set of ideals and beliefs about how to consult nature, and more importantly, why to do it. So what is biomimicry about? And when Janine Benyos first explained biomimicry to a stranger, it was not in a talk or a workshop, but she went to a big box store just after the book Biomimicry had come out. She was looking for her book and checked the nature section, the environmental section, design and engineering sections, but it was not there. So she asked the bookseller where the book might be shelved. And he came back with a perfectly normal but impossible question. What is it about? So Janine tried to explain. It's about looking to nature for inspiration for new inventions. It's learning to live gracefully on this planet by consciously emulating life's genius. Well, it's not really technology or biology. It's the technology of biology. And the shopkeeper lifted his palms as if weighing 2 packages and said something that Janine said she would never forget. Look, lady, he said, you've got nature and you've got technology. Just choose one. He was referring to the category scheme in the store, but Janine realized that the deep separation between these two ideas in our culture is why biomimicry needed to be born. So biomimicry, as we're finding out, is a shift from learning about nature to learning from nature to discover a new way to live. So what would nature do? We need to remember that sustainability requires more than just a mechanical adoption of new policy requirements. To be successful, a fundamental reframing of problem-solving activities is needed. And biomimicry is one way that we can change people's mindset around how to address problems and how to live sustainably. So for designers, architects, engineers, and innovators of all stripes, the answer to the question, what would nature do here, is a revelation. There's not one new idea, but millions of ideas, evolved in context, tested over eons, and proving to be safe for this generation and many future generations. And this trusted source of inspiration arrives just as our species is counting the casualties of our industrial crash. The models are organisms that manufacture without the traditional heat, beat, and treat methods, and ecosystems that run on sunlight and feedback, creating opportunities rather than waste. The resulting designs are functional, sustainable, and not surprisingly, usually very beautiful as well. Beauty is a large part of why biomimicry resonates. It brings us back in context with the living world, a place we were tuned to appreciate. So let me go back here. So biomimicry really contributes to many of the eco-design paradigms, and we'll look at how it fits in. Because of its broad range, biomimicry contributes both practically and philosophically to many of these eco-design paradigms devised over the last 30 years, and some of them we're really familiar with. The natural step, natural capitalism, the precautionary principle, the living building challenges, cradle-to-cradle, ecological design, and many more. It should be noted here that although an EMS, an environmental management system, can improve efficiency and generate improvements by tackling often neglected, easier projects, such as improved water or energy efficiency, most projects within an EMS are designed simply to better control existing cradle-to-cradle systems. These efforts usually plateau after a short time because after the low-hanging fruit has been picked, new projects become difficult to find due to the fact that there's a basic linear design of your existing system, and the underlying beliefs and thought patterns of employees have not really changed. EMSs are effective tools for the transition of sustainability only when they provide a framework for transitioning to borrow and return production models and for transforming organizational culture. So at EPA Region 8 in our office, we have not yet done work to affect cultural change around sustainability, but we recognize the need to do so and are taking some steps in that direction. The Forest Service Western Collective, for example, has adopted behavior change as their key goal in their sustainability program, and biomimicry is becoming part of that culture. So the Forest Service is using an EMS to transition to a culture of sustainability. The biomimicry approach seeks nature's advice at all stages of design, from scoping to creation to evaluation. Working with a biologist at the design table, innovators explore the true functions they want their designs to accomplish and then ask what organisms or ecosystems depend on their survival on performing those functions. To infuse life's systematic wisdom into the design of everything from carpets to cities, a list of life's principles serve as an overarching scoping and evaluation tool. It's really nature's own eco-design checklist. But products and processes are not the only human designs influenced by biomimicry. As more people see nature as teacher rather than a warehouse, biomimicry is promoting policies that restrain our powers and allow us to say thank you to nature by restewarding natural habitats. Nature-inspired innovation is but one of the solution-seeking paradigms in a human immune system that's pulsing with really good ideas. So there's 3 levels of biomimicry. The first level is mimicking the form. You may mimic the hooks and the barbs of an owl feather to create a fabric that opens anywhere along its surface, for example. Copying the feather design, the form, is just the beginning, and it may not yield something that is really sustainable. Deeper biomimicry at the second level, which is mimicking the natural process or how a thing is made. The owl feather self-assembles at body temperature without toxins or high pressures by way of nature's chemistry. The unfurling field of green chemistry attempts to mimic these benign recipes. The third level is the mimicking of the natural ecosystem. The owl feather is gracefully nested. It's part of an owl, it's part of a forest, that's part of a biome, that is part of a sustaining biosphere. In the same way, our owl-inspired fabric must be part of a larger economy that works to restore rather than deplete Earth and its people. If you make a bio-inspired fabric, for example, using green chemistry, but you have workers weaving it in a sweatshop, loading it into pollution-spewing trucks and shipping it long distance, you've really missed the point. To mimic a natural system, you must ask how each product fits in. Is it necessary? Is it beautiful? Is it part of a nourishing food web of industries? Can it be transported, sold, reabsorbed in ways that foster a forest-like economy? And humans are the only species on the planet that invent something and then decide what to do with it. In nature, organisms only invent something new when they have a new function to achieve. If we can biomimic at all three levels, natural form, natural processes, and natural systems, we begin to do what all well-adapted organisms have learned to do, which is to create conditions conducive to life. And creating conditions conducive to life is not optional. It's a rite of passage for any organism that manages to fit in here over the long haul. So how does biomimicry differ from other bio approaches? So let's look at some of those. So bioutilization is the harvesting a product or a producer. Its example would be like cutting wood for flooring or wildcrafting medicinal plants. Bioassisted involves domesticating an organism to accomplish a function, bacterial purification of water or cows bred to produce milk. So if you're using bioutilization, a well-adapted bioutilization strategy, it would be a sustainable harvest. And a maladapted would be an unsustainable harvest. For bioassisted, a well-adapted strategy would be natural breeding, and a maladapted strategy would be transgenics. And in biomimicry, we emulate the producer, and we mimic form, process, and ecosystem, and a maladapted way to do that is our traditional heat, beat, and treat. And I'll give you a couple of examples. One is abalone. So a well-adapted bioutilization strategy would be a sustainable harvest of wild abalone for nacre. In bioassisted example would be natural breeding of abalone for farming, for example. And a biomimicry well-adapted strategy would be mimicking the self-assembly process of the abalone to produce ceramics. In the maladapted version, bioutilization would be over-harvesting of wild abalone. In bioassisted, a maladapted strategy would be using genetic engineering of abalone to create a better abalone. And in maladapted biomimicry, it's how we produce ceramics using heat, beat, and treat. So there's nothing wrong with well-adapted bioutilization and bioassisted practices. They just cannot be called biomimicry. There also can be maladapted biomimicry if you use the same old unsustainable, life-unfriendly practices to do it. An example of that is Velcro. Velcro, the hook and loop system in Velcro was inspired by how burrs connect to your pant legs when you walk through the forest, but it's manufactured using petrochemicals. It's not a very environmentally sound manufacturing process. So let's look at the seeds of biomimicry. To succeed at biomimicry requires, as we said before, a kind of a mindset, a connection to nature, and a guide. So the practice of biomimicry embodies three interconnected but unique realms. There's the ethos, a reconnect, and an emulate. So this illustrates the ideal and deep biomimicry practice that the biomimicry group strives towards. And the three seeds of biomimicry represent the foundation of the biomimicry meme. The ethos seed forms the essence of our ethics, the intentions and underlying philosophy for why we practice biomimicry. And in its simplest form, it is our desire to fit in on Earth. This seed also represents our respect for, responsibility to, and gratitude for our fellow species and our home. It comes from a deep-seated belief that humans are one of many species populating the planet, each with their own inherent right to survive, Yet furthermore, that our survival as a species ultimately depends on their survival as well. So each individual seed is an entry point into the biomimicry meme, but all three seeds working together describe the experience and the approach that is needed. By holding this seed, the practice of biomimicry should lead towards a solution that creates conditions conducive to life. It acts as a guide and creates the opportunity of choice for where, how, and when the practice of biomimicry occurs. So we can think of times when biomimicry is not appropriate. And I had an experience when I was riding in the bus on the way to Denver the day that the Gulf oil spill occurred, which was declared the largest environmental disaster in history. And I was thinking, boy, I'm going to get a hold of all my biomimicry cohorts. We'll see if we can find some solutions, some bio-based solutions for this giant oil spill. And then I realized that biomimicry would not be appropriate in this situation because there is no organism on the planet that drills 5,000 feet down into the surface of the planet to get its energy source. There are organisms that eat oil, but that would be a bio-assisted technology, not biomimicry. So the Reconnect seed is about regaining the understanding and recognition that the two separate entities, people and nature, are actually deeply intertwined. We are all nature. For some, it will be the opportunity to rebuild or rediscover our connection with nature. To others, this might be the first connection. With this seed, the bond is strengthened and the skills to observe and learn from nature are enhanced. When I was studying biomimicry, I asked one of the professors, how do they really understand life's principles? And she said she started going out in nature and trying to identify life's principles in everything she saw. And she said it had to start becoming second nature. And once I realized I was actually looking at how snow had fallen on a pine tree, and the pine tree had bent really significantly with the weight of the snow, but it had not broken. Once the snow melted, and it would pop back up again. And I thought, oh, how resilient, which is one of life's principles. So I started to connect life's principles to nature. The Emulate seed signifies our intent to proceed as it is appropriate on this planet, nature as our model, measure, and mentor. Emulation is the action of biomimicry and occurs when humans solve problems through bioinspiration and ultimately minimize our impact on Earth. These three areas represent the core values and essence of the biomimicry means, but also describe three different emphases through which a person might come to biomimicry. Not everyone has the same motivation or interest in the field. Most people come to biomimicry through one of the seeds first, and then upon further exploration, begin to more strongly align with the other seeds. The beauty is that it's not necessary to have all three in order to start a practice of biomimicry. So a child might have a deep connection with nature, but not yet understand the concept of ethos. A person may feel the responsibility to give back to the earth, yet may not have a scientific understanding of biology. And that's where I entered biomimicry. I was searching for another mechanism to expand the role I play in bringing sustainability to EPA's customers. And thirdly, a person may experience biomimicry as an innovation tool before he or she realizes the aspiration of sustainability. So I'd ask you to raise your hand, and if anyone has an idea of what brought you to biomimicry.
Okay, just
Is
waiting for
anyone raising their hand, Mila?
Not yet. Still waiting for the first volunteer. Oh, we have one.
Okay.
Sarah Baker. And
you.
Sarah, can you hear us?
Yes, can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Cool. Well, I would say first of all, it's actually Marie who brought me to biomimicry, but for me, it's the idea that I already am involved in sustainability and sustainable operations throughout the agency, but needed a better way to apply my engineering skills. So I think Marie, I probably came in the same sort of place you did, where it's just it's allowing me to look at things that I'm already trying to do with a totally different lens, and that's what's brought me into it and got me really excited about it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, well, thanks for sharing. Well, let's move on. So the reconnect seed, the second seed of biomimicry is to reconnect with nature. And have you ever wondered why it is that we enjoy natural settings, or if we're asked to imagine a really special place, a peaceful place, 95% of humans choose someplace in nature. We know that humans are attracted to the sights and sound of nature. Certain natural elements elicit a positive reaction with us. Generally, people prefer a setting with natural elements over places without them, and even prefer natural light over artificial light. This is because we are nature. For all of our evolutionary history, we've been dependent on and subject to nature. So for almost 200,000 years, we've survived in a tight-knit hunter-gatherer societies where our survival depended upon the relationships within the tribe and our ability to read and understand the natural world. Because of the way we evolved, nature continues to play an important role in how we function and see ourselves. Only in the last few centuries have we camouflaged this close reliance on nature with cultural adaptations, giving the impression and illusion that we no longer need nature as a means for well-being. And it's interesting that when we imagine a peaceful place, 95% of us choose a place in nature, and yet statistically 90 to 95% of all the time humans spend that much time indoors of their lives, especially in the United States. So although emulate is only one of the 3 essential seeds of biomimicry, it's the one that audience have heard the most about, usually associated with doing biomimicry. So case studies of biomimicry are an easy place for people to enter and begin learning about biomimicry because it's the most tangible. A designer with a strong connection to nature discovers that biomimicry taps into an amazing wealth of knowledge about nature that could be translated to innovations in human designs. So emulation is important because everyone is a designer, regardless of what discipline you may practice. It could be part of your job, or you could design something as simple as the landscaping in your front yard, or a week of dinners, or a strategy about implementing a plan. And unlike the other seeds, emulate clearly needs a disciplined practice, the biomimicry methodology or framework. And we call it integrating biology into design, IBD. So you'll be hearing a lot about that because that's what you will be doing. So let's look at how to design with biology. So we want to find out how to integrate biology into the design process, and we want it to be applicable to any scale or discipline. So throughout human evolutionary history, there have been cultural norms that have generated expectations about how one should interact with nature. So as a human species, we've been around for about 200,000 years, and the first 190,000 years, about 95% of our human timeline, our connections were utilitarian, moralistic, naturalistic, and most likely negativistic. Life was challenging with high mortality rates, creating a fear of nature in many ways. We relied on nature, and we were surrounded by nature all day. We no doubt developed a spiritual relationship to nature, and we see that a lot in the Native American cultures in the United States. But over the last 10,000 years, since the advent of agriculture, these relationships have shifted towards a more dominant relationship seeking to tame and control nature. About 200 years ago, at the birth of the Industrial Revolution, the utilitarian relationship took hold. This shift completely altered our relationship with nature, moving towards an era where we focused on what we could extract from nature in addition to how we could tame her. So we got roads, dams, clear cuts, fire suppression, dikes, retaining walls, and I'm sure you can list many other techniques we've perfected. We even focused our scientific relationships with nature on learning further how we could control life through biotechnology, genetic engineering, pest management, animal husbandry, and more. It was through the study of biomimicry that I realized that as an engineer, it was my job to really just to destroy the biologist's world by improving it with structures. And the first time a biologist told me that, I was shocked. I had never thought about it that way before, but that's really what we're all about. So what is a biologist at the design table? A BAT. A BAT is a professional biologist trained to help bridge the gap between biology and technology. Because of our disconnection with nature, we need a translator. A BAT draws upon her or his knowledge of the natural world to help professionals access design genius of life and emulate nature's patterns and principles for sustainable solutions to just about any challenge you can imagine. Biologists drawn to this work tend to have a deep love of nature, a commitment to sustainability, and they are visionary, creative, and enthusiastic individuals. And their skills include the ability to identify functions in nature and functional needs in industry. Again, they act as that translator. An aptitude for connecting functions in nature with functional needs in industry. They need the ability to conduct biological literature research and identify patterns. Ability to communicate biologically accurate information in a meaningful way to a diverse group of non-biologists in speech and in writing. They need to understand life's principles and their implications for sustainability. They have to have a talent for inspiring and informing audiences about biomimicry through case studies, and a capacity to facilitate a shift in thinking that is needed for sustainability. So in asking the question, what would nature do, we'll go through this study here. So as part of our biomimicry training, we visited Interface Carpet in Georgia, as well as the David Oakley Design Studio. And all around the studio there were signs of nature, such as here at the design table. And you can bring nature into your space by starting a collection of interesting natural artifacts, maybe something from your eyesight. This way you'll be reminded to ask the question, what would nature do? Recently sorry to the vegetarians on the phone, but we had a turkey for dinner, and part of the neck bone was sitting on my husband's plate, and he looked at it, and I said, oh, that's so interesting. Let me put it with my biological collection. So it's any part of nature that could inspire a design or bring nature into your workspace. So David Oakley is the designer for Interface Carpet. His father was also in the carpet industry, but they manufactured only wool carpet in those days. And his dad would bring the carpet scraps home and then use them as mulch in his garden until they converted from wool to nylon. Initially, when Interface Carpet Company adopted their Mission Zero goal, David Oakley was told to design sustainable carpet. In order to return to wool carpet, all agricultural land in the world would needed to be converted to sheep raising in order to generate enough wool for that industry. So Interface adopted a cradle-to-cradle approach, inventing a machine that turns nylon carpet into nylon fibers and PCV backing that's then reused. All the fibers were a dark color, almost black. So David designed carpet patterns that incorporated at least 10% dark color in order to use this material. As the process was perfected, Interface was able to separate colors, and it was not hard to incorporate this recycled material into carpet design. When we met with David, I asked him why he embraced biomimicry, and David said, I had just put all my money into building this design studio in Georgia, and my main and only client told me I had to. I did it to stay in business, and then I got biomimicry. And he's a big proponent of talking about biomimicry. So what does nature know about design? And researchers at Interface company. They're known for their commitment to zero waste. And they found out what nature knows about design when they took a walk in the woods that inspired them to mimic the organized chaos of a blanket of fallen leaves. And their result was their entropy carpet line. Designer David Oakley reflected that only in our synthetic world do we want perfection. One shade, no blemishes. If we can't match a carpet's color exactly, we call it a defect. So Interface sells carpet squares so that when an area is damaged, only those specific squares need to be replaced, not the whole room. Now with the entropy line, the replacement is even easier. There's no worry about matching dye lots, and tiles can even be replaced in any direction. The entropy line is varied in color and pattern, yet when laid out together, it forms a cohesive pattern. Not only is the replacement easier for the consumer, but there's a lot less waste during production since entropy line can use multiple dye lots. And considering that Interface is the world's largest commercial carpet manufacturer, this amounts to a significant reduction in waste, especially when this biomimetric product now represents 40% of their carpet sales. And I've asked you to watch Ray Anderson's video, and it's really inspiring of how he reframed an industry and what motivated him to do it. And thanks to Greg for presenting that at his Pioneer Salon here in Colorado, so I was able to see that video. So the entropy line is an example of mimicking nature's visual patterns, mimicking just the form, but after the success of entropy, Interface has been trying to incorporate biomimicry into their processes. They're integrating life's principles into their business as a whole. And in doing so, Interface has become more efficient in their production. In hard numbers, they've avoided over $400 million in waste costs, diverted over 100 million pounds of materials from landfills, reduced their greenhouse gas emissions by more than 30%, and reduced their water intake by 75%. So what they mimic is they mimic form and some processes. So let's look at this framework for designing with biomimicry. So designers already have a design process, and this framework gives context to where, how, and why biology fits into the process of any discipline or scale of design. And so those of you who are new to design, this framework can serve to promote your own budding design process. And again, we're integrating biology into design, the IBD process. So that process consists of the scoping phase, and the purpose of the scoping phase is to identify the problem to be solved together with its context, criteria, and constraints. Even without biomimicry, this stage often includes such steps as identifying the real challenge, which you've already done, defining the operating parameters, and creating a design brief or project program. And that's really what the homework is assigned for this month to work around. Then once you've finished with the scoping phase, you go into the creating phase. There's glimmers of ideas that are sketched on napkins during lunch, options are explored, concepts are fleshed out, buildings are drawn, prototypes are modeled, and materials and samples are compared. Brainstorming ideas and seeking inspiration also falls into this category, and it's the category that we like the most, and we probably already have done some of that in our design challenge. And then the evaluating phase is the last phase. It's much less dramatic, and unfortunately is sometimes left until the very end and given only a token effort. Perhaps maybe just looking at the financial analysis, if nothing else. Evaluation is used to determine if goals and metrics were met, to test the feasibility of a concept or idea, or to solicit and incorporate feedback on the success of an implementation. It's the place where you check to see if life principles have been followed. A very simple description of the design process would be to proceed through scoping, creating, and evaluation. This unrealistic route implies that when one phase is finished, the designer moves to the next phase. But projects really aren't that simple. In reality, design is more fluid, and these categories of scoping, creating, and evaluating are not a set of intuitive steps with instructions, but the different components that need to happen through a design process. While there is a path in this process, in reality the steps are not done in isolation, but usually involve a quick trip back and forth. So we can look at that, that process. So integrating biology into design is not one methodology from start to finish that works for all industries and all applications. In some cases, the terminology that is used in biomimicry means completely different things to different design disciplines. The approach that is used here in biomimicry is to teach around a framework in which one can learn how to, when to, and what biology to integrate into your design. So this diagram is meant to be less discipline dependent, but instead is intended to help designers practice biomimicry while designing anything. So emulation is not a common word. In IBD, we use emulation to mean bringing in the principles, patterns, strategies, and functions found in nature to inform design. Within this process, there are 3 areas in which biology is the most informative to the design process, and that's in the scoping phase, the phase that you're going to be working in first. The creating phase is also important, and in the evaluation phase to incorporate biomimicry. These phases, while the terminology may not be identical to how you phrase them for your discipline, appear to be present in all design processes. And I wondered if there were any designers on the phone who wanted to add anything at this time. Any hands raised, Mila?
Not yet.
Okay,
Waiting for that first volunteer.
Okay. So let's look at the evolution of carpet tile using integration of IBD by integrating biology into design. So in 1994, led by Ray Anderson, Interface Carpet, the world's largest carpet manufacturer, took on what is now known as Mission Zero, and here are some of the logos they used for that. It was a large-scale, vision-driven overhaul of the company designed to ultimately achieve 100% sustainability by 2020. So they call it climbing Mount Sustainability. They began to look at biomimicry as a design approach to help meet their objectives. And Interface Carpet Company was the first customer of the Biomimicry Guild. And I think Dana Bymauster, the head of the guild, was about 23 or 24 at the time, and she shows up in the Georgia office, and she just was scared to death. But out of this came an amazing transformation of a whole industry. So Interface began to look to biomimicry as a design approach to help meet their objectives. Interface had many concurrent loops integrating biology into design and solved for a suite of issues, including dyeing the fibers, reducing backing weight, powering their facilities, and managing their waste. Many of their innovations were inspired by life's principles, and they continue to work with these guidelines while asking the question, how would nature solve this? They have demonstrated over the last 10 years how powerful and flexible biomimicry can be in facilitating their transition to Mission Zero. So let's look at their process. So the first evolutionary step in the carpet tile emerged from a workshop where Interface design team was asked to take a walk through a forest in search of ideas. On this walk, the design team, naturally looking down as underfoot was the area of their interest, was struck by the patterns of leaves on the forest floor. Having not undergone a formal scoping process, they did not yet have a function identified prior to their nature discovery, but rather only held in their minds. How would nature design a floor? They realized the forest floor had a cohesive design, even though many different elements were scattered around in what was dubbed organized chaos. This design principle inspired the idea that no two floor tiles had to be exactly the same. Any tile would look comfortable sitting next to any other, regardless of dye lot or direction of weave. And this led Interface Floor to create the world's famous and widely popular entropy design. So traditional carpet tiles should all match using the same dye lot, facing the same direction to look good. This is virtually impossible to maintain, and keeping spare tiles from the same dye lot was expensive and costly. Entropy carpet tile changed that paradigm. You could place any two tiles next to each other in any direction. This dramatically reduced the cost of storing carpet tiles and even reduced installation waste from 4% to 1.5%. Significant savings on installation of millions of square feet of carpet tile. In the evaluation of their successful product, they began to recognize that while carpet tile may look like nature, at least functionally, it was not necessarily manufactured like nature, nor were the many specific elements of the carpet, the backing, the adhesive to the floor, the dyeing, the material sourcing, etc., following life's principles. So they went from the creating phase to the evaluation phase. Well, as a result, Interface began to identify deeper functions within the realm of carpet tiles, like how to adhere, provide cushioning, create color, resist stains, manage urine, acquire materials, and power the assembly of materials. All the functions of carpet tile manufacturing. They added some guidelines to the questioning that ruled out solutions that might be deemed unsustainable. So they went from evaluating back to the scoping phase. Spurred by their success with entropy, the innovation team began challenging themselves to innovate around specific problems. So biomimicry shifted Interface's philosophy of design. It changed their mindset. They began to frame their challenges as how would nature do this, and turned to biologists at the design table for help. One big challenge was the use of glues that give off volatile organic compounds, VOCs, for many years after the carpet is installed. Conventional carpet tiles are glued to the floor. This glue off-gassing is a health risk both for installers and for occupants, and it virtually eliminates any chance of recycling the carpet at the end of its use. The team quickly realized that the gecko might have a good solution for their carpets. Instead of glue, gecko uses van der Waals forces. They're intermolecular forces rather than chemistry to attach to surfaces. The team evaluated various lab efforts to emulate the gecko and ultimately ruled that the technologies were still too new to be commercially viable. So they went from discovering to evaluating to discovering to evaluating. They were looking at different options. Then they went on to explore nature-inspired glues. But various evaluations ruled each one out, because remember, they had put other environmental and sustainable guidelines in their selection of their technologies. So with help from the BAT, the biology at the design table, the design team came to realize that nature doesn't often use glue, especially if options that require less energy and material exist. And remember, one of life's principles is be resource, material, and energy efficient. Likewise, life generally doesn't use glue when it only wants a temporary hold. When Interface then asked themselves what they really wanted to do, and they realized their function was to hold materials down, hold carpet down. In their own eureka moment, they recognized that gravity, which is one of the Earth's operating conditions, is the most universal mechanism for holding things down. It's one of the really critical operating conditions that we all are subject to. So they went from evaluating to discovering to scoping out different ideas. In the creating phase, they recognized that if they could attach carpet tiles to each other, collectively the larger carpet would weigh enough that gravity would do the work of the glue. They knew that their solution would need to be sustainable. And after several iterations, they invented the tactile, which is a copyrighted invention of Interface. The tactile is a thin, post-it sized patch that uses a layer of low VOC epoxy glue on the carpet side to attach carpets to each other at their corners, creating large conglomerates of tile that act as a wall-to-wall or area rug. This eliminated the need to glue carpets to the floor, evolving the product yet again, providing for even faster installation time, more flexibility, healthier air quality, and easier recycling, and may I say less cost to interface. So here's an example of how they integrated biology into design. They went all over the place. They didn't go from the sculpting phase to the creating phase to the evaluating phase. They went back and forth many times, and I think designers will concur that this is usually the design process. You've probably already had some creating and evaluating around your own design challenges. You're thinking about what you can do. So let's go through these phases, and the scoping phase is the one you'll be working on for homework this month. So the scoping phase in general, scoping occurs prior to the actual design and includes preparatory work determining the project's challenges, collecting and analyzing the facts, setting the goals, and harmonizing the project team. And your exercise last month was a step in starting to harmonize your team, and messages that I heard from many of the teams that's already happening. It provides the opportunity for stakeholders to unite behind a common aspiration, focus on priorities, and set performance standards for your design. The project scope is the chance to determine which goals are non-negotiable and which goals are areas to be monitored for improvement. When it comes to creating a sustainable design, the scoping phase is the time to set the bar as high as possible to start, realizing the current system we are all tied to will likely eat away at the edges of that expansive vision. The product of the scoping phase is a brief written explanation outlining the background, the context, the goals, and constraints of your challenge. As an example, if the project was an architectural building, the design brief would include generic scoping data such as site analysis like geotechnical reports, review of existing structures and conditions, the climate in the place where the building will be constructed, orientation, etc. It will include programming, what functions the building needs to perform and for what purposes are the occupants using the building, as well as what is the relationship between the building's different uses. And the scoping phase also includes the construction cost and the project budget. So when you set your vision you may come up with when you design for nature may seem incredibly lofty. But Peter Senge of the Society for Organizational Learning uses a rubber band metaphor to describe how you can leverage the creative tension inherent in that vision. He says that tension in a stretched rubber band is like the tension between an idealistic vision and a reality. And he advises that we use the creative tension to pull reality up to the vision rather than what we usually do. We usually downsize our vision to go more towards reality. But that's not what sustainability is about, because we have to seek out different ways of doing business, even if it's hard. So in integrating biology into design, by incorporating biology into the scoping phase, you are setting out to design for nature with the intent of reintegrating human designs into nature, fitting in, rather than just imposing our designs on nature, which is fitting on. So it's a different way of thinking about things. In this phase, you can think of nature as mentor, in that life is setting the expectations for living and designing well. It is inviting life to the process and learning from life's most universal lesson, practiced for billions of years by millions of species. And what I like to explain to people about biomimicry is it increases the list of your brainstorm ideas by including all those strategies from nature. And one benefit of including the strategies from nature is they've already been tested. We already know they work. They've been working for billions of years. From a biological perspective, this lesson could be described as a well-adapted biological strategy must first meet the functional needs of the organism in the context in which it lives in order to contribute to its survival. In essence, the concept of meeting functional needs in context is one of life's most fine-tuned and universal strategies. If an organism is unable to meet its functional need in context, it dies. Think of it as the golden rule. And a human example is that there are many businesses that have a universal business model that are going out of business because they're not locally attuned to the local business. One reason why Walmart has been so successful is that the managers of the Walmart stores are able to decide what products to put in their stores. Unlike Sears, which is going into bankruptcy, their business model was that they would deliver the same products to every store, no matter what ecosystem the store is in. So from the perspective of human design, this biological perspective translates into this one. A well-adapted design must meet its functional needs of the design challenge in the context in which it must exist in order to contribute to its success. And sadly, not all designs follow this rule. There are plenty of beautiful designs that don't function at all, and many fully functional designs that don't work in all the contexts that they're applied to. And I can give you an example from our own EPA building. We're in a gold LEED certified building in downtown Denver. And when it was being built, we had the National Renewable Energy Lab review our 75% design plans. And they noticed that the heating and cooling system that was selected for the building actually gave us the points that we needed for our gold certification, but that it wouldn't function very well in the dry climate of Colorado. And so we would have a gold LEED certified building that performed very poorly. So because of that analysis, we rejected the design bid plans at 75% complete, and they went back and chose a different cooling and heating system that served in the context of the Colorado ecosystem. As part of your team homework, and this was not listed on your homework sheet, I sent out a second notice, you need to go through the scoping exercise and identify the goal, context, and constraints of your challenge. For example, if the goal of the organized team is to develop an organizational structure that would work, let's say, in the federal government, what are the constraints that this team must work around? Rules that are non-negotiable by federal guidelines or regulations. If the organized team sets a goal to develop a new innovative organizational structure that would change the way the federal government works, a loftier goal, there would be less constraints, but it would be harder to implement. The context for the team H2O would be different for water use in Montana than in developing a water use system for, let's say, Florida. Team Adapt has set its context around organisms that live in this ecosystem, and the team is constrained by this context. They can look at adaptation strategies from organisms in other ecosystems and determine whether they would apply here or not. And the communications team's context will determine what constraints apply. If they want no constraints, the team could look at any communication strategy used by nature and see if they can identify patterns and processes that would foster better communications for any group. Really understanding the challenges to be solved and the constraints in which they must be solved helps ensure a more successful outcome. Success, however, can be defined in multiple ways, and one person's version of success might not be nature's version of success, which is survival of the species. One of the functions a design must achieve in context is to succeed on Earth. That's exactly what life's principles are, the design lessons shared by all organisms for survival on the planet. Because remember, all organisms on Earth follow life's principles except humans. We've got some catch-up work to do. So by bringing life's principles into the scoping phase as non-negotiable requirements, you are setting the ultimate guidelines for success. So integrating biology into design. Let's look at function, what you want your design to do. So how do you integrate biology into design? Let's break it into two parts that you'll work on this month, function and context. Function is what you want your design to do, not what you want your design to be. For example, one of the original functions of the bullet train was to carry people from one location to another quickly, over 200 miles per hour. So design a fast train was the design scoping phase. When adding the function of doing it quietly, it changed the design to include new constraints. When the designer took it a step further to incorporate biology into design, he asked the question, how does nature soundlessly move from one media to another without causing a disturbance? The practice of understanding function is really simple. Do you want a light bulb, which is a noun, or do you want to illuminate, which is a verb? All functions can be captured in verb form: provide shelter, create color, cushion impact, communicate freely, avoid collision, lubricate, retain water, structure a system, adapt to climate change. By default, the tendency slips into what we can picture or imagine in our minds, which is usually an object, so it's usually a noun, rather than a process or an event unfolding over time. As soon as we can begin to turn the static picture into an active movie in our minds, we change our mindset, it's possible to discover function. So, what do you want your design to really do? So, however, be forewarned. The first function identified is not usually what the ultimate function is. It often reflects a predisposition to a desired or assumed outcome or design solution. You can get to the real function by asking why many times. Why do you want to create a light bulb? To create light. Why do you want to create light? To illuminate. Another set of questions would be, why do you want a water filter? To filter water. Why do you want to filter water? To remove particulates. So maybe removing particulates is your function, not filtering water. A third example would be, why do you want a headquarters building? Well, we want to bring staff together. Why do you want to bring staff together? To improve communication. Why do you want to improve communication? To create positive feedback loops. So in that case, creating positive feedback loops is your function, not building a headquarters building, which you may need anyway. As you can see, with each of these rounds of questions and answers, the potential solution to the challenge is redefined. As a result, determining function might require quite a bit of time just to get a clear concept of what function or functions the design needs to perform. A light bulb manufacturer might not be interested in new ways of illuminating. They may only want a better light bulb. Another company might be inspired by the possibility of illuminating without necessarily needing a light bulb and take it further for natural lighting, for example. In either case, getting to the function involves asking why over and over again. What do you want your design to do, smattered with a lot of why questions and probing deeper until you get to where the solution can potentially lie. So I sent a PDF of the biomimicry taxonomy, and it can be a really useful tool in thinking about function, and it's a comprehensive look at the functions of life. Just about every human challenge can be solved using biomimicry, and it should have a corresponding function on the taxonomy. When you and your team are struggling to identify function, the taxonomy can provide some ideas. I sent out an additional homework email which includes this PDF, and it's a copyrighted for the biomimicry group, so don't spread it around. It also sets the basis for how the online site asknature.org works. Asknature.org is categorized based on this taxonomy. So if you plan to bring biology into the creating phase, you can test how well you have defined the function by asking the question, how does nature perform this function? And asking how does nature do blank question is called biologizing the question. So you need to be able to identify your function and then put it in biological terms because you're asking the biological system how they do that. In my practicum for the biomimicry degree program, our team challenge was to help the Cuyahoga River Valley to develop land use policies based on biomimicry. We determined that nature does not develop and implement policies. Nature follows the policy of life's principles. So our function was to develop mechanisms to incorporate life's principles into products and processes in the Cuyahoga River Valley, as an example. So we've looked at how to identify the function, and now let's look at how to define context. So context is under what conditions, circumstances, scenarios, constraints, laws, budgets, systems, etc. must the solution meet its defined function. And context must consider the end user, the end use, the supply and distribution, the economics, and how the design functions in the space and time. So understanding function can bring considerable light to the challenge, but it does not guarantee the solution will be viable. Likewise, while it broadens the solution space considerably, it can actually create a space too vast to explore reasonably. And that's where context comes in. So for example, the water team is not going to look at how nature stores, collects, and distributes water in every ecosystem in the world. They're going to identify what context they want to look at because it's ecosystem specific. So that is under what circumstances and conditions must the solution meet its defined function. Ultimately, in a truly sustainable design, incorporating context considers how the solution fits into the larger scope of life. So, we've covered a lot of information about how we view biomimicry, the biomimicry meme, how biomimicry differs from other bio approaches. We looked at the design process that Interface Carpet used initially to develop nature-based carpet. We learned about the value of following a design process and how function and context is valuable in the scoping phase of solving our challenges. Teams with designers as members will have an easier time with this month's homework, just as teams with biologists will enjoy that expertise in future assignments. So this is an opportunity to learn more about each discipline and their role in biomimicry. So I wanted to take some time to go through the 2 homework assignments that I've sent out to you, and we can practice, if we have time left today, practice identifying the function of several things that are part of one of your homework. So let me go through that. So we have team introductions. 2 teams will introduce themselves at each of the next 2 webinars. And this is a way that we will become familiar with each other before the in-person session, and that I and the other team members can get to know you better. For this assignment, each team must submit 1 or a few, keep it simple, PowerPoint slides with the following. Well, we already know your team names, who will present. So Milo will return the presenter status over to 1 team member to go through the PowerPoint slides. You may want to state your names, your education, experience, You might want to include photos, your area of expertise, your place of work, what do you like to do, what brought you to biomimicry, and none of these are mandatory except for your name and your area of expertise. You know, just decide what you'd want to know about each other and tell the rest of the class. Now, each team is suggested that each team prepare the assignment even if you don't present until later, until the June 21st session. It will be a good way to get to know each other. And we have Team H2O, and the organized team will present on May 13th, and then the communications team and the adapters will present on June 21st. The second assignment is to learn about function. I sent out a function exercise. Discuss with your team and compare answers. If you have questions about how to identify the function, please just give me a call. I'd be glad to consult with any of you over that. Just remember, you need to, how would nature perform this function is really critical, and ask why many times. So you need to determine what are the function or functions you want to achieve in your challenge. Prepare a PowerPoint slide with again, your team name, your challenge, and the functions you are trying to achieve. And we'll share those at the next webinar to see if there are functions that several teams are trying to achieve, so we could pair up on that. I've asked you to watch that Ray Anderson video, and again, thanks to Phil Duggan and Greg Varhol for the idea. They host a monthly Bioneer Salon here in Boulder, Colorado, where they bring together like-minded people and expose us to new ideas, where we can sit around and talk about things in a group setting. And when the last time I met with Janine Benyos, she shared with us an experience that in Poland, under communist rule, people used to meet in the basements of their homes, and they used to practice the democratic process, so that when Poland fell from communist rule, there were people in the community who understood how to implement democracy because they had been practicing it. And I see the Bioneer Salon as a similar kind of forum where we talk about and compare stories about how to change mindsets and how to act sustainably in our lives and communities. And so congrats to those two guys for doing that. I've given you some more examples or ideas about how you could continue your eyesight exercises. You can do them if you find those ideas interesting, or if not, you can just continue to observe and expand your observation skills. I've also given you the defining context worksheet where you can, and the list of questions about that you need to answer and discuss with your team. Now remember the slide I showed you of the interface carpet system that they went around and around and around. So in defining your context, you may find as you go through a lot of your design challenge phases that you forgot some things for your context, or that some things that you thought you wanted to do were way too lofty and you needed to change that. So this is a first stab at all of that. So we have about a half hour left, and I don't mind leaving off early today, but I wanted to just throw out a few of the ideas from the Getting to Know Function exercise and see if we could go through a couple of these examples as a group to see so that people have an idea of what's expected of that. So in this exercise, you'll practice identifying the function of a design, and you read through each statement, and you want to know what is it that the design needs to do, and your function will be a verb. So let me throw out the first one. The first one is, there are too many plastic drink bottles in our trash, and we want to find a solution that will result in less trash. So what is the function that you want to achieve? So you can raise your hand, or you can type an answer in the message box.
Okay, I will, I'm just going to wait to see who the first person is to raise their hand. Can you repeat that one more time for us?
there are too many plastic drink bottles in our trash, and we want to find a solution that will result in less trash. So what's the function that you want to achieve? No takers?
Not yet. I think we're all still processing. No takers, Marie.
Okay, well, for
wait. I got one. Okay, so the function, reduce plastic bottle disposal.
Okay, and why do you want to reduce plastic water bottle disposal? Or why do you have plastic bottles?
Okay, I'm gonna unmute somebody here for a second. Let me just see if that person wanted to respond verbally. No. Okay, so I'm gonna call on. I'm not sure if it's Elsa or Alyssa. I think it's Elsa. Can you hear us?
I can.
Okay.
So I guess it's fluid transportation or storage.
That's really your main function, is to provide portable hydration. And so that's very good, Elsa. That would be your function. Your function really is to provide people with portable hydration, although most people would first jump to, let's set up a recycling program. And instead of going back to the root function, you want those plastic drink bottles because you want portable hydration. And so if you can look at it from that way and ask the question, how does nature provide portable hydration, instead of how do we set up a recycle program, it's a way different solution that you come to. Very good.
And can we hear from one more, Marie?
All right.
Go ahead. I'm going to call on you, David.
Okay.
Can you all hear me?
Yep.
Okay, great. I just got a new laptop, so I wasn't sure if it had a microphone or not.
You do.
So I interpreted the question maybe a little bit differently, or maybe I'm on a different track, but basically reduce unnecessary consumption and or methods, and not just reduce it, but enable it to be reduced. Not just preach at people, but develop a solution that can be implemented efficiently, effectively, timely, one that makes sense, one that will last.
So your function is to reduce the need for plastic drink bottles rather than finding a way to remove them from the trash. Very good, very good. Good thinking.
And to enable that, because I think maybe the reduction gets to, we're as engineers like myself, we want to put the constraint on the system, but maybe we need to open up the gate of the, the clear path of flow to enable it. Does that make sense? Or?
Right. Because if you have a good solution but nobody implements it, is it really a good solution?
Well, yeah, and to not constrain energy, but to get on the path of energy and momentum that enables it. So don't fight the upstream fight. Get in line with the flow of nature, which I'm not sure of the specific answer, but anyway.
That's some good thoughts. You're headed in the right direction. Okay.
Should we call on one more person, Marie?
Okay.
Okay, I'm going to call on you, Lynn. Lynn, can you hear us?
I can.
Okay, we can hear you.
Great. I was just thinking kind of similar to the first answer. It's just mimicking nature's distribution of water in a way that doesn't require this kind of individualized service of the bottle.
So that would be your solution, and what the function you want to achieve is to bring that hydration to the person, and what you're suggesting is that you look at how nature does it, rather than putting it in a bottle and delivering it the way we do it now.
Yeah.
Okay, great, great. Okay. So let's try one more. I'm hoping you guys are getting the gist of this. So the second one on the list here was some people don't want RAID on their shelves in their home, but they don't want bugs either. So what's the function that you want to achieve? So some people don't want RAID or a pesticide on their shelves in their home, but they don't want bugs either. Are there any people taking this one, Mila?
There are just now a couple of raised hands. I'm going to call on you, Laura.
Okay, I was just thinking we use RAID to keep bugs from our houses. So would the function be that we want to keep insects out of our homes or the areas where we live and work?
So your voice is really low, but I'm interpreting what you said as you want to deter pests from your home.
Yes, that's correct.
Right. Instead of, a lot of people answer you want to kill bugs, but you really don't want to kill bugs. Really your function is you just don't want them in your home. So, you know, you could ask the question then, how does nature deter organisms? And maybe you could come up with a much silly.
Okay, Laura, I'm going to mute you.
Okay.
There's some weird feedback going on, so thank you. Whew. All right.
So in this particular case, to deter insects, Paul Stamets, the mushroom guy, if some people are familiar with him, came up with a new way to, he found a mushroom spore that actually deters termites. So they just don't come in your home if you put this product around your house, rather than the traditional method of coming in and just soaking your foundation of your home with some really horrible pesticides. So when he looked at, you know, what function you really want to achieve, you don't care if termites live in this world or not. You just don't want them to feast on your home. So the real function is deterring insects from entering your home rather than killing them. Good. Well, I hope that gives you a little bit of an overview of this functional exercise. And I think the one for context is pretty self-explanatory. Does anyone, I'll open it now for any comments or questions people might have about either the webinar or about the homework.
Well, I'll just say, Marie, that a couple of people, you know, typed in some great answers to those questions as well. And one person in particular kind of nailed it by saying, ask why there are bugs in the first place and what can be done to eliminate the source of the bugs so you don't have to
Very good, by asking why many times. Why are they even there? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Good. Well, does anyone have any questions or comments? Otherwise,
I think that Deirdre has a new question. I'm going to unmute you, Deirdre. Oops. It's not letting me unmute her. Sorry, Deirdre. I'm trying, but it's not letting me for some reason. So I guess that's it.
All righty. Deirdre, did you want to type your question, or are you okay?
Oh, she's okay.
Right. All right.
Oh, I do have one more question. Is there a source for the latest Life Principles list?
Yes, I can send that. I'll send that out as a PDF. Again, it's a copyrighted document from the Biomimicry group, so I can send it out to you as a PDF, but you're not able to just copy it randomly and use it in your stuff. But I will send that out right after this presentation.
And then one other question, Marie, for those folks in your area, would you mind sending out information on the Biomimicry Salon, where that takes place, where and when?
Okay, and I can. I will ask Greg if he would like to do that.
Okay.
I think that's public knowledge. Is that true? Is Greg on the phone? I don't know.
Greg Hill, he's here.
No, it's not Greg Hill.
Oh.
Okay.
Greg Varhola?
Yes.
Yes, he is here.
Hey, Greg, you want to, is it all right to send out the notice about your biomimicry salon to the workshop participants?
He sent an email address, which is Colorado Pioneers Salon @hotmail.com. So Colorado is spelled out Pioneers Salon. So there's 2 S's there. And go ahead and forward that invitation, Marie.
Okay, great. Okay, is that it?
That's it.
Well, thanks everybody, and good luck with that homework, and let me know if you have any questions. I'd be glad to help you with that. And I'll sign off for now. Thank you so much, Myla, for all your help.
It's a pleasure, always. Thank you, Marie. My head is swimming with all of the information that you gave us. It's been awesome. Thank you.
It will all make sense.
Sure. I'm going to hold you to that. All right, thanks. Thanks, everybody.
Bye.